included in the addendum report now, and it's not. It doesn't impact our final decision on the siting and appearance of the mast.
So can I just confirm information in the report is accurate and legitimate?
Yes, yeah, 100%, yeah.
Okay, well, in addition to what I've just asked, I think it's worth mentioning that I've received an email from a resident which highlighted that the relevant regulations say that the gap should be twice the height of the mast, which will make it 30 metres. But are you able to confirm that this proposal complies with the relevant regulations?
Yeah, the telecommunications development complies with basically the specific section within the general permitted development order. So everything that is in that, basically, it complies with the specific parts of the GPDO. It asks for a set standard of information, and then it also asks for an assessment to be completed in regards to the siting and appearance of that mast in the surrounding area. And that is basically where the assessment on the application is made. It's not a full planning application. So the normal types of things that would be taken into account in those kinds of applications are not taken into account in this. Is basically, yeah.
Okay, thank you. My final question, it's more of a concern. It's just the fact that this proposal will, in fact, affect the visual amenity of the local street scene, as it is overbearing and visually intrusive. Essentially, there is no other way to describe a 15-metre high structure. It's just out of character with the area.
The NPPF, so the National Planning Policy Framework, states that we can't question the need for telecommunications infrastructure in a specific area. And as I said in the presentation, the legislation allows for some visual impact as long as the agent has demonstrated that that impact has been mitigated as far as is practicable. And in this case, where there was a 20-meter high telecommunications pole, which has been reduced in height to 15 meters, we feel that basically that is the minimum that they'll be able to do without harming the benefit that 5G is going to bring, which is the view of central government.
Perfect, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Chaudhry. We've got Councillor Balmer.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just question, you said the flat is 15 meters away from this installation.
That's correct.
I did visit this site. It appears to me far less than 15 meters. Is that a guesswork, or did you actually do the measurement?
It's approximate. I can see that it is an approximate gap, or an approximate measurement. Obviously, in the current circumstances, I haven't been able to go down to the site. But even if it's say 10 meters away, we still feel that impact in regards to the siting and appearance is still is still okay.
I think we are talking about lives of people, residents who live there. Their life is going to be impacted. I don't think you're treating this application seriously the way you answer the questions.
No, we have to assess. We have to assess different application types. This specific application refers. It basically we're assessing it against specific legislation. If the applicant submits a set standard of information which is considered acceptable, then we only need to assess the application against the siting and appearance of the telecommunications mast. Given the alternative sites that the agent has put forward and the character of the surrounding area, we feel that this is the right place. This is the right place for it. Sorry, yeah, that's...
My second question is, what other sites were considered?
So a number of other sites were considered, but each of those sites, I believe, and I think that the agent was right in discounting each site because they are either far too close to residential accommodation, or at the intersection of roads which don't quite have the same character as the intersection of Southview Drive and Herman Hill. There was one which is relatively similar to the proposed site, which I think is the intersection of Southview Drive and Pulteney Road. But this was probably the second choice for the applicant. But it's not shielded appropriately, and it's located a lot closer to residential accommodation. I'm sure that if you were to look through each of those alternative sites, you would agree that it was right that each of those sites were discounted and that this site was the right site out of the alternative sites.
My last question to you is regarding, you mentioned 3 cabinets being put on the side of the footpath. Yeah. Will that leave enough room for people in wheelchairs and prams?
Yeah, it definitely will.
These are quite big cabinets.
No, so they're not massive, and part of the positive of this site in particular, particularly looking at it in regards as opposed to the one at Pulteney Road, the intersection of Pulteney Road and Southview Drive, is that the footway at this location is a lot wider than the footway at other locations. So there is space there for a telecommunications mast and the associated equipment cabinets, and on top of that, space then for pedestrians to use their footway. So on that basis as well, I think that it is, out of the ones that they've identified, is the right site.
Thank you, Chair. I'll come back later on with other questions.
Thank you, Councillor Balmer. We've got now Councillor Emmett, followed by Councillor Solanki, Councillor Prakash, Councillor Jeffel, and then Councillor Ali. So when you're ready, Councillor Emmett.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Russell, when I read these papers, it seems to me that this request for this mast is fueled by the need for the 5th generation 5G telecommunications.
Councillor Emmett, do you mind putting us the speaker near? We can vaguely hear you. Yeah, this.
Sorry, Chair, I put it on in a hurry. Is that okay? Yeah, Mr. Russell.
Perfect.
When I read these papers, it seemed to me that the need for this mast, or the request for this mast, was fueled by 5G communications. Given the current situation where Huawei have been told to remove all their equipment, and that there has been quite widespread talk that this might put 5G back as much as 5 years, would that not mean that there's a very, very good chance that this mast will be the wrong mast in the wrong place at the wrong time?
Well, that may be the case, but as I stated previously, the prior approval application, this type of application, we can only really assess it against appearance and sighting. That's really not a material planning consideration. So really, it's not really relevant to the assessment of the application.
It seems a bit peculiar that it's okay to put in an application where there's no relevance to something that might not be needed. But if that's
as the legislation is worded now, and as we as planning officers assess applications now, the that application is done against the appearance, design, and setting of that telecommunications infrastructure. Whether or not that will still be the case in the coming weeks and months, as I don't know, as things change, that will be another case. That will be another matter. But yeah, at the moment, we just we assess applications, the specific type of application as they are.
Can I just interject here? And just this is a point generally. The identity of the applicant is completely irrelevant for this application, and the internal manufacture of the infrastructure is also completely irrelevant.
When I mentioned Huawei, Mr. Swaffer, it wasn't because I just assumed it was Huawei equipment that was going in. It's just that all the documentation is 5G, and with the current decisions that have been made, it's the fact that 5G may be pushed back 5 years.
But that's not within the remit of this planning committee.
Is now joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you, Councillor Emmett. We now go to Councillor Prakash.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to know from the officer, the original application was 20 meters and it's been reduced to 15 meters. Whose decision this was? Was it the advice of the officers or the applicant?
Well, if it was the applicant who was originally going to put in, basically whatever the applicant originally submits is their preferred option. So after, obviously, we realised that basically we wanted to reduce the impact that the telecommunications mast would have on the surrounding area, and they said that they would be able to still have that 5G coverage over the restricted cell area. So we asked them to reduce that height so that impact would be mitigated somewhat. And that I mean, that's what I was saying a bit earlier, where I think that they've sufficiently mitigated that impact. But yeah.
So Chair, so it was the advice from the officer.
Sorry?
Yes or no?
Tom, did you get the question?
So yeah, sorry, it was on the advice of the officer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prakash. We've now got Councillor Solanki.
Thank you. I have a number of questions. Obviously, a few concerns I have is the overall height of the mast. I know you've said that the developer reduced the height from 20 to 15 meters, but that is still in line with a locally listed church. And I think we need to take into consideration the impact on the locally listed church, as well as the way that the residents are affected by it. You know, it is very close proximity with residents' houses. And I know you said that it's not, but I mean, I'd like to ask how many members here would like a mast of that size outside their homes. The impact is quite overbearing on residents. And I know you said that the developer has gone back, thought that they reducing the mast would make a difference. But when you talked about considering other options, and sorry, I can hear a lot of background noise. So when you talked about other options and looking at other sites, was it ever taken into consideration that you could possibly deliver smaller masses, maybe 3 or 4 in different locations that actually would be away from where local residents are staying, and actually away from locally listed buildings?
So in order for to basically so that we can roll out 5G across the country, which is an ambition of central government, each 5G cell area is very restricted And obviously the area within South Woodford, so the area around Southview Drive where the proposed development is going to happen, is very, very residential. And this, we're not in a position where we should question, according to the National Planning Policy Framework, we're not in a position where we should be questioning the development. In fact, the reason that this application type is there is to make it easier for this type of development to go ahead. So really, if it wasn't in this site, and as you say, if you wanted to do lots of smaller ones around the area, that wouldn't actually decrease the impact. It would actually increase the impact on residents in the area.
Sorry, but isn't this committee's remit to actually question planning applications coming forward? I've simply put a question to you, and I don't think anything I said was, out of context of the planning application that we're looking at.
Sorry, well, could you repeat the question? I thought that I answered it. Sorry.
No, I thought you did, but I was just wondering whether, I know you said that the current location is quite heavily compacted with residential, but is there any other locations that you've actually looked outside of South Woodford and actually looked at how you can make this massing possible?
Tom, you're on mute.
Councillor Solanke, you're on, so you need to unmute yourself. Yeah.
Sorry,
sorry.
I didn't know how much you heard from that. Basically, what I was trying to say is, have you looked at any other locations outside of South Woodford that actually where it would be possible to have different types of massing, a lot smaller? And yeah, if you could answer that, that'd be great.
So basically, due to the constrained cell area of 5G, they have to be located at times to get that blanket coverage that the government wants. They have to be located at times in highly residential areas. So it's not, basically, according to the National Planning Policy Framework, it's not our position to question the need for telecommunications infrastructure. So in South Woodford, they're like, in terms of what they've submitted, it's not our place to say there can be no telecommunications infrastructure in South Woodford. And in order to get that blanket coverage, there will need to be coverage in South Woodford.
No, sorry, if I could, through you, Chair. I obviously understand there's a need for the telecommunications. All I'm saying is masts can be actually put on top of buildings. That is a possibility. Instead of actually putting it in the close proximity to a locally listed building and with residential, was this option not looked at actually on top of buildings, away, from residents and away from locally listed buildings?
Councillor Solanke, Tom, can I just interject here? As in his presentation, he did explain that there were a couple of other sites explored, and this was the site more appropriate, as I understood. Tom, could you expand on the question that Councillor Solanke is saying, specifically before considering this site? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, but those were sites considered by the developer. Didn't we as a council actually look at other options of whether masts can be actually put on top of buildings, away, like I said, away from residents, local residents, and away from locally listed buildings?
So you're correct in saying that telecommunication infrastructure can be located on top of buildings, but in terms of what the applicant has submitted and the alternative sites provided, we can't question that, and we have to assess the proposed site against the siting and appearance of that development in the context of the surrounding area. Yeah, so we can't really sorry.
Tom, are we in a position as a council to suggest or propose alternative sites? I think this is what Councillor Solanke is trying to say. Have we, as a council or as an officer, are we in the position to suggest to the applicant for alternative sites?
Could I help? Could I help?
Is that correct? Yes, please. Yes, please.
what we have to do is assess the application that has been put in front of us. So one of the requirements, as Tom said, is for the applicant to demonstrate that they have considered alternative sites and they've selected their preferred site. And our role is then to assess that proposal on its own merits. And that's simply what we're doing. We're looking at this specific site and assessing that against the criteria that we have.
Thank you, Liz. Really appreciate that. Does that answer your question, Councillor Solanki?
It does. Yeah, it does.
So you had some more questions.
That was all of them. I think one of the things that I'll just finish off. I know Liz confirmed that officers did look at the application and where it is located, and you've said that you are happy with it. But I think a lot of residents and a lot of members on this call would not, would they want a 15 meters mast outside?
Councillor Solanki, this is a question to the planning officer only, just questions at this stage.
Yeah, that's
when we
fine.
come to debates, we can explore that option. Thank you, Councillor Solanki. We have our next councillor. We have Councillor Ali.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for that presentation. I've got a couple of questions. Key one is, in terms of, did you actually do a site visit there? Because of circumstances, you said, I got the impression that you hadn't, but have you physically gone and done a site visit? First question. Yeah, go on.
I personally haven't, but Liz has went to the site on Saturday to look at it.
Okay. Second question I have is the IT glitches we had during the consultation period. The IT was down. People, we've had emails from residents saying they couldn't get in touch. And I understand in your addendum you've said they could have emailed, but there are people who are digitally excluded. How has the applicant ensured, or the officers ensured, that everyone had a chance to get their views included?
So on this point, this is, so in this application type, the prior approval, the consultation period is done either through a 21-day period site notice or through notifying neighbouring occupiers. That 21, so obviously the circumstances are different, but we did follow due process in terms of what is in the legislation in the General Permit Development Order, and how that applications of this type and development of this type should be consulted on. So yeah, I think that, yeah, we did comply with that.
So sorry, I've missed. How did we comply? How did we consult the residents and the neighbourhood who would be affected by this?
Did I elaborate? We
yes.
put up a site notice. We put up a second set of site notices when the location was considered to be slightly obscured, and we also, following that, sent out letters to neighbours within a certain radius of the site. The residents who had already objected to the application also received a letter. This was the reconsultation when the height was reduced to 15 metres. On the point of the website being temporarily unavailable for objections on this application, the email address is always available for people to write to as well, and we can also receive objections by post. So we always have multiple opportunities for that eventuality.
And Liz, just to go back, I mean, Thomas said you did the site visit on Saturday. I mean, isn't that a bit late? I mean, did you do an earlier site visit, or is that the only site visit that was done? Because I know a lot of things are done digitally, but I just want to know, because it's different being physically there to see who's affected, how they're affected, compared to digitally looking down on a Google map or some kind of app, that may be used. So I just want some clarification on that. Thank you.
So during the pandemic, we have not been able to conduct site visits because we have not been in a position to be using public transport and officers are working from home. It's very usual for us to use aerial imagery. Google Street View is excellent and is pretty much the same as being there. So that's been our standard approach to all applications over the last 3 or so months.
Thank you, Liz. Councillor Ali, do you have any more questions? Thank you, Councillor Ali, and thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Our next, thank you. We've got our next speaker is Councillor Canal, followed by Councillor Singh Bowler, and then Councillor Duvall. So, Councillor Canal, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a proposal. I've listened with great interest to the remarks of Councillor Chowdhury and Councillor Solanki and others. I am familiar with this area, as are many of us. I completely understand the comments made by Ms Sullivan, the constraints they're working under, and I'm very grateful for the work they're achieving in these constrained times. But I am not confident that I can make an informed decision, and I know the area very well, when there are, to me, many other obvious alternatives in the area. And I appreciate that our colleague who made the presentation discussed 2 or 3 alternatives with the applicant, but I think he was given bad choice, slightly less bad choice to choose from, rather than possible choice, possible choice, possible choice. I'd like to propose that we defer this application. Officers engage with the applicants in a
Councillor Canal.
No,
Councillor Canal.
I'm allowed to do this.
Can I just finish? Can I interject, Councillor Canal?
Finish my sentence.
Can I interject? We are questioning. It's not a debate. We're not debating here. We are just asking the officer. This is a question only session.
I believe on the standard orders, Chair, I advise you otherwise. I believe I can.
Councillor Canal, this is Meg speaking. Chair, could I just, Councillor Canal, it is perfectly okay for Councillor Canal to make a proposal. It would be better to wait to the appropriate stage, as the Chair says.
I can make the proposal, yes?
At the appropriate stage following...
respect, Mags, I can make the proposal at any time in the meeting. Those are standing orders. And I appreciate my colleagues and my officers are very, very busy people. I'd like to propose that we defer this application, allow officers to engage with the applicant in further conversations to discuss better sites that are nearby, and councillors in this meeting have indicated they believe that's the case. That will save us time and allow the applicant to choose a site that's better for our borough, better for them and better for our residents. So I'm formally proposing, as I can understand yours, Chair, that this application is deferred.
Thank
and I
you, Councillor Canal. Councillor Canal, we haven't reached that stage. This was I did make it.
Sorry, can I interject also?
Councillor Duvall, we're not there.
It's my understanding that at any point of the meeting.
Sorry, excuse me. I just wanted to make one point.
Only asking questions.
Sorry, Chair. May I speak? Brett from Planning. Yes. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify to members in light of the commentary made by Councillor Canal. Obviously, this is a prior approval application. And I think the key thing I just want to remind members is we have a set time period to determine the application. That's 56 days. If we go beyond that period, then the application is given consent by default, unless, of course, the applicants give us a time extension. So, Liz, could you just clarify, when does the application actually expire and when do we need to make a decision?
We have an extension of time to cover this committee date. If it was to be deferred, we would have to request a further extension of time, which is entirely at the applicant's discretion. If they don't do that and the application isn't decided, it would be approved by default.
So therefore, can I just advise members then, I'd be uncomfortable in terms of deferment being left to the applicant's discretion. And I'd like to just encourage members to debate, as you are, the merits of the proposal and come to a view as to whether you support the officers on those merits or not, rather than deferment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Brett. As we're only asking the officer questions, so we haven't come to that stage yet. When we come to the stage, just to remind committee members that we're only asking questions and getting further clarity. Our next agenda item would be on debates, and I will be asking members to debate on this topic. So now we have got another two speakers waiting to speak. So we've got Councillor Singh Bowler. When you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Russell. I appreciate that this application is made under the General Permitted Development Order, but what I'd like to know is, did the applicant go beyond the minimum statutory consultation and do any additional community engagement with local residents to explain what the proposals are, answer any questions, and offer any reassurance? Do you know of any such activity having taken place?
They notified, I believe they notified ward councillors and they notified the council in advance of them submitting the application. There's no further engagement on their part prior to submitting the application.
Did we receive any information about that consultation? What came, in terms of what feedback came from that engagement? I appreciate this is a bit different to some of the other applications we get where there's a statement of community involvement, but did we receive any feedback regarding that that engagement that took place?
No, I don't believe there was any back and forth between anybody and the agent. They simply sent out their notification.
Councillor Singh Bowler, do you have any more questions for the officers?
No, that's it for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have got Councillor Duffel.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom and Liz, for the presentation. I just want to pick up on Councillor Solanki's point yet again. I just want to know, has the applicant at any point said the alternative sites put forward were the only viable alternative sites?
I don't. No, they didn't say specifically.
They did. So they didn't say it specifically, or they didn't say it.
They didn't say that. Basically, we have to assess the application that is given to us. We're not in a position where we should be suggesting further alternative sites.
Okay, so the answer to that is they didn't say that these were the.
So, Councillor Duffel, we've all been muted, so you need to unmute yourself.
Rather than, okay, so we don't know as a council that any other viable sites exist.
No, we couldn't say that for certain.
Okay, that's fine. That's all I want to know. Okay, I'm also looking at the site plan, and there were a few what in the presentation was said small cabinets going to be put along the street scene. These are 1.8 meters. These are taller than me, and they have small gaps in between them. There is a street light right at the bottom of the street. Have we assessed this from a public safety point of view?
As I stated, we assess the application against specific criteria that's in the permit development order. If they have come through with a standard set of information, then we just have to assess that application against the setting and appearance of the telecommunications infrastructure. You are right in saying that the cabinets, they're going to be there. And they're quite large in scale, but because of the
well, they're not. They're quite large in scale.
Because of the context of the surrounding area, we felt that it would be acceptable in terms of the setting.
We can't hear you, Councillor Duffel. You need to pop your mic.
Sorry, I'm not sure why I'm keeping going on mute. So it's a dimly lit area with tree coverings, got a fence on one side, cabinets on the other, and we haven't assessed this path from a public safety or crime point of view at all? Is that a yes or no answer? Like, have we assessed that?
No.
No. Okay. And what are the mitigants, except from dropping the mast height from 20 to 15 meters, have you seen? Or would we have, if the applicant had come into a 30-meter mast in the initial application and then dropped it to 20, would we be happy that that was a mitigant? Or are we just saying that because they dropped it by a few meters, that's mitigant enough for the Bridge Council?
Well, the legislation actually has a specific maximum height that the telecommunications development can go up to. So 20 meters is the limit. So it wouldn't be allowed to go higher than that, like to 30 meters, for example.
Okay, so just by the fact of dropping it from 20 to 15, we are happy that that is a mitigant, even though we're assessing it on the current application.
We can't question the principle of 5G in South Woodford or that infrastructure in the surrounding area.
I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning what we consider to be a mitigant as a council.
I think that.
Yeah, sorry. Can I assist and just come in on that point, just to assist the conversation?
Thank you, Brett. Councillor Duffield, do you mind muting yourself? Then I think the echoing won't be there. Thank you. Thank you, Brett. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to aid the discussion, I think the key thing is, and this is not by our design, but central government has made it very clear that we're limited in how we can assess these types of applications. That's a deliberate intent. And I just want to express that to members, because obviously I'm conscious this is emotive. I'm conscious this has caused a lot of debate, discussion within the community. And I just want to reach out to say we are limited on what we can assess this application on. That's not by choice. That's been set by government. And that's been government policy for a number of years. And obviously the intent is to promote, rightly or wrongly, 5G technology. In terms of sight and appearance, we are limited on that, and that's about a visual impact. So, you know, we talk about crime or health and safety. We're not and cannot go into the realms of that. We're there to purely assess the visual impact. Now, I appreciate people may have a view about 20 meters, 25 meters or 15 meters. As officers, we took a view that 15 meters is acceptable. Masts do have harm. The legislation allows harm. We feel that harm is acceptable. However, members may take a different view, and obviously you're entitled to that view. But I just wanted to share to members, we do recognise the challenge, and we are limited in how we can assess these types of applications. That's deliberate, that's intentional, and that's just where we are. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brett. We've got some hands up. I'm not sure whether they're new hands or old hands. Councillor Solanki, is there a new hand or an old hand?
It's the new hand.
Okay. When you're ready.
Yeah, it's just a few more questions that I've got, if that's okay. I know you, just carrying on from Councillor Duffield's point, and I know you talked about the fact that there was no consideration taking place with regards to safety or the safety element of the scheme. But one thing that I'm quite mindful of is when we're looking at residential developments or when we're looking at mixed use developments, we do, look at the safety grounds of the development. So I was just wondering why that wasn't obviously considered, because we are, is in close proximity, as I said before, to residents' homes, as well as a locally listed building that is well used. If it's okay, I'll just go through my other questions as well. With regards to a pre-app, was a pre-application undertaken with the developer? Because I know you said before that then there was no advice given on additional sites or alternative sites that could be used. So I was just wondering whether a pre-application with officers actually was undertaken for this application. And then I have another question with regards to if we were to reject this application, what would happen? Because obviously this is quite different to a normal application. Would it be referable to central government, and will central government intervene, or what would happen with that? I just want to think back and think about actually how can we actually take this report seriously? The officers, you know, have completed the agenda, made the recommendations. You know, we've printed the agenda, and you've told me that a site visit only happened on Saturday. It's something that just really doesn't resonate with me, in the sense that we are talking about the livelihoods of our residents here, and if we cannot even be serious enough to even
Councillor
take a
Solanke,
site visit.
what is your
Sorry.
question? Councillor Solanke, can I interject here? Not in the debate stage. If you've got a specific question, your first two questions, then we will ask the officers to respond, but we will debate later on after this.
Sorry,
Thank
if the
you.
officers could answer my first three questions, that would be great.
Yeah, can I do that? So I know you're referring to secure by design and things like that we consider when we're looking at residential or mixed use developments. It's simply not a criteria that is available for us to consider within the prior approval process. We can consider the siting and appearance. So siting would be ensuring it's not obstructing the highway, ensuring that the pavement is still wide enough, as we touched on earlier, and appearances, its scale, its relationship with nearby buildings, etc., which again is discussed in the report and Tom's been touching on. If the application was to be refused, the next step would be the applicant potentially appealing to the planning inspectorate, who would then take the decision about whether or not to allow the proposal. You had a second point in between those two, which I'm afraid I didn't write down, so I'm sorry if I've missed one of your questions.
Yes, sorry, if I could come back through you, Chair.
Yes, go ahead,
yeah,
Councillor Solanke.
Sorry, yes, I wanted to ask whether a pre-application had taken place.
Sorry, yes, I remember now. No, it didn't. So the standard process is that the applicant will notify us. It's not a formal pre-app. We do tend to respond to them and invite them to engage with our pre-app process, our paid pre-app process. I can't confirm whether we did or not in this instance, but we didn't have pre-app with them.
We seem to have some technical issues.
So can I just confirm there was no pre-app that was taking place?
No. Have we lost Councillor Islam? Oh, you there? I can't see you. Sorry, Chair.
No, I'm sorry. Yes, I don't know. For some reason, I'm not getting everybody up.
Councillor Islam, this is Meg speaking. It's fine to proceed as long as we can hear you clearly and you can hear us.
Yes, that's although I can't see everybody. So, Councillor Solanke, is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, we have got two more hands up. We've got, I'm not sure whether they are new hands. Councillor Emmett. Councillor Emmett?
That's an old hand, Chair. I didn't realise it was still up.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I'm now going to, do we have any more speakers? If not, I would like to invite, we have two speakers. We haven't got the applicant, but we have the members of the ward councillors. So I'll start off with Councillor Brewer, Verily Brewer, who would be speaking against the application. So Councillor Brewer, can I just remind you that you got 2 minutes when you're ready. Councillor Brewer.
Thank you, Councillor Islam. I speak alongside the 440 local residents who have objected to this 15-metre mast. I appeal for the following points to be considered. Number 1, Huawei mast will have a serious negative impact on visual amenity. The mobile mast regulations were introduced with a ministerial commitment to ensure local communities retain their role in influencing the visual impact of new infrastructure. Here, the local community has delivered a clear verdict on the mast visual impact. Number 2, the mast is disproportionately tall. The church's height has not been used as a benchmark for other structures in the area in the last 130 years, and the case has not been made for this to start happening tonight. Number 3, the mast is visually intrusive and unacceptably prominent in front of our historically important Holy Trinity Church. Number 4, it is out of character with the area, which is very largely residential and low-rise. I am glad that the error in the original report about the nearest residential property has been corrected, but now this is acknowledged to be under 15 metres. The certificate of compliance with the international guidelines provided by the developer is seriously compromised, because that was based on the incorrect claim of a 35-metre distance. I'm also glad that a bat preservation condition has been added, but last-minute changes to important details do not give confidence that the recommendation to approve is sufficiently sound. I urge you to scrutinise the proposals carefully, and I hope you will agree that the plans as they stand cannot be permitted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brewer. I understand you'll be speaking later on, so I'll come back to you. Thank you, Councillor Brewer. We have another members, committee members, do you have any questions for Councillor Brewer?
I have a question.
Councillor Bummer, when you're ready.
Yeah, Councillor Brewer, you mentioned 440 people. Is that the total we have between all three councillors, or just for you? People who are opposing this proposal.
I've had a number. This is the number of people who have contacted me, and many have contacted me on multiple occasions. So it hasn't just been the 440. Sometimes I've been having 80, 100, 120 contacts per day for weeks on end of very, very distressed and very concerned residents.
My second question is, did you try to contact the developer, the developer to speak to the developer so that the residents could be spoken to by them?
I haven't contacted the developer. I didn't see that as being my role at all.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bummer. We've got Councillor Singh Bola. When you're ready.
Chair. Thank you, Councillor Brewer. Could you tell us what feedback you've received from local residents and what issues in particular have come up whilst in conversation with your local residents? Thank you.
Well, residents are very concerned about the health of their families. They're very concerned about it's a local residential street. There are lots and lots of houses that are nearby, and they just absolutely do not want. They're frightened for their families. They're frightened for they are concerned about health and safety. They are concerned about just how big this mast is going to be, where it's placed next to the church. Why has it got to be here? They are very, very worried, about the effect on local businesses. I mean, it has been so widespread, I have to say, I can't think of anything that they haven't been concerned about. They absolutely don't want it, and they're very worried about their health.
Thank you, Councillor, and Chair, thank you. Did the applicant ever sit down with you and other concerned residents and look at other sites and other options and and try and address your concerns regarding this application in any way?
No, there hasn't been any of that.
Thank you, Chair.
Any more questions to Councillor Brewer? No. Thank you, Councillor Brewer. Thank you very much, and I'll come back to you later on.
I had a question.
In the meantime, we got our second.
Chair, I had a
sorry,
question.
Councillor Ali.
Thank
Councillor,
you.
I didn't see you. Yes, please.
Thank you,
proceed when you're ready.
I just wanted to ask you, in terms of follow on from Councillor Singbola's question, the residents that complained and put things in writing, did they get any reply back? And did any of them approach the applicant apart from the council? But did they get any reply back as far as you're aware?
I think that there were major concerns about the whole consultation process, and they had experienced a lot of times when they hadn't been able to access the link. So they felt very disempowered because they were very concerned, tried to use the normal mechanisms of raising their concerns and found that they were not able to do that. So they really didn't feel that they had been consulted adequately. They didn't feel that they'd been empowered or they'd been able to exercise their rights in this particular way. And so that just all raised their concerns. So no, they did not feel that that was being adequately taken into account by officers. Does that answer your question?
Partly, but as the officer said, there was more than one way for residents to get in touch. So, I mean, apart from the glitch on the online, they could have written and did their right, and did they get any reply?
Well, some did. I think the officers would be able to tell you basically the number of objections that they received. I mean, obviously, as ward councillor, I can only report on the content of the emails and communications that I received as their representative. But I think if you want more detailed information in terms of the numbers of electronic as opposed to normal mail, etc., I think officers would be better advised to tell you about that.
Thank you.
Is that all right? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brewer, and thank you, Councillor Ali. I just want to remind my members, if you can keep your camera on, but mute yourselves. Thank you. I would now like to call upon our next speaker, Councillor Sue Nolan. Councillor Sue Nolan, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to. Sorry.
Just to remind you, you got 2 minutes. When you're ready.
I've got it down in my phone. I have. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. I am speaking as a South Woodford councillor, Conservative councillor, on behalf of the 400 plus residents, and that was last week, but I really can't say how many more have actually have contacted me since, and I'm objecting on the reasons below. Number one, the height and bulk of pole and associated kit and cabinets is terribly detrimental to the visual immunity of the area. The damage, and number two, the damage and destruction of the grass verge and planting areas. The pole and the cabinets will occupy 50% of the width of that verge, and the cabinets will be taller than the existing shrubs. The claim that the trees will shield the mast only true in the summer. When the leaves are shed in autumn, the mast will be extremely visible. Page 6 of the report, under the general permitted development order, the A2 class orders A and B gives the grounds for refusal. If the application does not comply with the requirements of minimising the impact on sighting and appearance. As been mentioned, the pole is 6 foot wide, 2 foot 6 inches deep, a cabinet 5 foot 8, the same height as a family car, and the 50% higher than the existing cabinets on the existing site as it is. The adjacent Holy Trinity Church is locally listed, so any proposals are important visually and could set a precedent if local listings are ignored. These proposals add to the street furniture and clutter that are already there How much more street furniture do we need? These additions would be far too much. The General Permitted Development Order requires visual impact on the area and the locally listed church to be minimised. The bulk and height of these proposals have not been minimised, and the impact will be extremely detrimental to the area. The applicant should be looking to share masts like the ones located near Charlie Brown roundabout. Report said it is by a commercial area and has been mentioned. The only commercial aspect to this proposal is the side entrance of the builders' merchants opposite. And there are, above the shops, there are residential flats, and it's only 10 metres away, officers. I actually went down today with a tape measure and measured the distance between the grass verge and where the builders' merchants are, and they are 10 metres, only 10 metres. So please, colleagues, for the reason I've given, please, would you please refuse this application? Thank you very much indeed. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Members of the committee, do you have any questions for Councillor Nolan? I have got Councillor Singh Bowler. Councillor Nolan, do you mind? Is it an old hand? Okay. Councillor Barmer?
I have muted, Chairman. I have muted.
Yeah. Councillor Barmer, have you? Oh, you're not as well. Do we have any questions for Councillor Nolan?
There's Councillor Duffel.
Councillor Duffel.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm the other councillor for South Woodford, and we've had lots of kind of like messages on a daily basis from hundreds of residents. Councillor Mrs. Nolan, could you give a flavour of some of the kind of the messages that we've been receiving from worried residents? Like, as I say, hundreds of worried residents.
Yes, thanks, Michael, for that. Well, there have been numerous questions. I think the number one, the number one question was health. They were very concerned about the proposal of the mast being sited there and the fact that it would be so visually intrusive to the area. I mean, I've explained the height of the cabinets and how high they would be. I mean, I'm 5'2", cabinets would be 5'8", 5'8". The desecration of the grass verges, I mean, that's unbelievable. They're taking away the grass verges there as well. The aspect as well of the school. We have a very large family community who live in the area, and the majority of the children go to Nightingale School and have to pass that area every single day going to school. And parents are rightly really concerned about that. Again, the church, for example, there is a small nursery in the church. There's a scout hall there as well. So you've got lots of young children going on a daily basis past that, and parents are rightly worried about it. I think the number one concern that I've had was the lack of confidence in this council, because they don't feel they've been listened to. The website was down for 5 days. I reported it and was kept being told that it was being fixed, but I think that was it. Residents have tried to contact the council on numerous occasions about this and don't believe they've been able to get through. And eventually the website was fixed. And I was reassured that all residents' concerns would be noted. But to say they could write to the council, I mean, you know, I've written cards to various friends in the last few weeks, and it's taken 10 days for a card to reach that person. So I think, you know, residents are really unhappy about the way the whole proposal is, and the dismissive way in which the council has actually dealt with this particular application. I think it's incredible the amount. I certainly, as 22 years as a councillor, my post bag has never been so full on this one, and I certainly would urge the committee to reject this again on the basis that I believe that the minimisation hasn't been satisfied, and this would be detrimental to the area. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Councillor Nolan. Councillor Duffel, do you have any more questions?
I do not. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nolan and Councillor Duffel. We move on to the next stage. We have two residents. I would like to call upon, I understand one of the residents will be represented by Councillor Brewer, Mr. Darren McGrath. We have two speakers, Mr. Darren McGrath and Mr. John Cassidy. So I will now call upon Mr. Darren McGrath. Maggie, is Councillor Brewer stepping in for Mr. Darren McGregor? Oh,
no, I believe he's here, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
We can
Yes,
hear
we can
you
hear you.
loud and clear.
Okay, apologies for that, because there's also been issues with the connection here. Good evening. My name is Darren McGrath, and I live at number 1 Trinity Gardens, Southview Drive. My house would be 30 metres from the proposed mast site. There are homes located even closer to the mast. They would be only 15 metres away. The historic Holy Trinity Church is less than 15 metres away, and the Holy Trinity Church nursery is only 30 metres away, and that houses 80 children on a daily basis. My attraction to the area and this road was the very residential nature of the neighbourhood, and I am very happy living here. I speak on behalf of myself and those who object. Since May, there have been over 400 objections logged against the mast. The process has been very frustrating, especially during the current pandemic. We are stressed about the longer term effect of the mast being so closely situated to our homes and church. Many of the objections are from parents and families who make use of the great local amenities of the Holy Trinity Church, the church nursery and local group activities, and also the Playdays Nursery, Nightingale and Oakdale Primary Schools are all located within a short walking distance of the proposed mast. We must consider the current the current street scene. I believe that the position of the mast would be detrimental to local architecture, the streetscape and the historic Holy Trinity Church. The views in the area will be affected. The size and position of the mast will not be appropriate to the local massing and the scale of local building within our neighbourhood. Trees are seasonal, and so the mast would be totally visible for 6 months of the year. There is uncertainty, and 5G installation has had very recent deferrals by government. Is this being taken into consideration? Please do consider alternative sites. There are surely other locations that are not so residentially populated and would be more suitable. If Hutchinson 3G originally needed a 20-metre mast, why was the proposal resubmitted at 15 metres once over 250 objections had been presented? Very recently, some groundworks appear to have happened where the mast would be situated. Does a 15-metre mast only metres from your home make you feel happy and safe? We must consider each other and the environment that we are creating to live in. I thank you all for your time, and we do hope that our objection will be fully supported.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. Members of the committee, do you have any questions for Mr. McGregor? No. In that case, thank you, Mr. McGregor. I'll now call upon the next speaker, Mr. John Cassidy.
Thank you, Chair. John Cassidy is coordinator of the nursery school at the Trinity Church next to Southview Drive, and this is a script of his speech objecting to the proposed mast. My wife and I have owned the preschool nursery for the past 20 years. Founded in 1967, we rent the church halls, have an excellent reputation and provide a valuable service to the local community, providing education for up to about 80 under 5-year-olds. We use 2 buildings, the church hall and the scout hut, both in the grounds of the church. These buildings are only about 100 yards or so from the proposed site. I read that the radiation footprint is around 500 to 800 yards and feel that this should not be ignored. The 2 main concerns that we have are, number 1, young children are more at risk and vulnerable to any ill effects than adults. And number 2, the fact that we have already had parents and staff expressing concerns about the mask being so close to the setting. This, coupled with the recent coronavirus-19 crisis, which has caused us to close for 3 months, furlough our staff and see other preschools fail to recover and close down, our sustainability has come under serious threat already. Recovery will be challenging enough without additional environmental health concerns from local parents. The position of the applicants and the basis of the officer's recommendations is contradictory. There is no mention of the nursery in the report, which may have been overlooked. Would the committee now give it their most serious consideration? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brewer. As the objector is not here, so we will just take statement and move on to the next stage of the process. We have now concluded the presentation and representation, and now I would like to invite for discussion, comments and debates from committee members.
John Cassidy is now exiting.
So who would like to start off with comments, debates, questions? Councillor Barmer? No?
Well,
is it an old hand? Okay. Sorry.
I'm happy to start. Are you ready?
Okay. Well, we got yes. When you're ready.
I don't think the application has been thoroughly examined properly. All the issues that are there, it appears to me that it wasn't done professionally. So I got a number of points there. The mast would be overbearing for the environment, for the area where it is. It's too near residential properties. We heard it's around 10 meters. It'll be harm to health and be unsightly. So from my point of view, I don't think this is something which I can support.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barmer. Councillor Solanki.
Thank you, Chair. I also, like Councillor Barmer, think this application has not been taken seriously by our officers. You know, the fact that a site visit has been taken place on Saturday is quite shocking. How can we take this application seriously if officers haven't? And another point I wanted to make is, you know, it's almost like we've been told that we have to decide whether 5G broadband is something that we want. Then we've been told that this is going to be in locations where residents live. That's the reality, and unfortunately, we should not have to follow that. You know, our residents' livelihoods are at cost, and I think we need to take into serious consideration that this is very near to a locally listed building, very close to residents' homes, and it is intrusive and overbearing. And I am seriously concerned that alternative locations weren't even considered or even suggested. A pre-application with the applicant wasn't even considered as well. That's something that I am strongly passionate about. Those discussions would have at least helped consider the mast at a different location. So we really need to think about our residents' livelihoods here. You know, I'll just ask members on this call, you know, would any of one of you want a mast right outside your house, a 15-meter mast right outside your house? No, I don't think many of us would. So how can we then expect our residents to have the same?
Thank you, Councillor Solanki. We've got Councillor Singh Bhola.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I've heard the presentation and I've heard the answers given by officers, but I'm concerned about the proximity of the structure to residential properties. I believe it's going to be intrusive and unsightly feature in the street scene and further distract from and be detrimental to the appearance and quality of the surrounding area. And for the record, I'd like to add that whilst I'm not against 5G technology and the associated infrastructure in principle, I do on this occasion find the siting the bulking, the height to be a negative impact on the visual amenity and highly problematic? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Singbola. We've now got Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Chair. I just failed to see how this development will actually be of benefit to the area. The proposed mast is located in a clearly residential area, and there is approximate baby and toddler group, playgroup and preschool nursery. It's just simply appalling that a better suited location was not actually looked for. I also agree with previous comments that were made that this application has not been taken seriously by officers, because I fail to understand how mistakes such as missing out flats that are 15 metres away from the proposed development are missed out in the report. How can such a mistake be made? Moreover, as councillors, we are elected to represent the interests of residents in Redbridge, and whilst a number of objections may not be legally recognised as a material consideration, I just simply cannot bring myself to vote for an application that is clearly not in the interests of residents.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. We've got now Councillor Ali, followed by Councillor Duffel.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's difficult because of the COVID-19 and the restrictions and the officers, everybody's working environment is different. However, even taking all of that into account, and from what we've heard and the discrepancies between initial reports, secondary reports, addendums, etc., and like Councillor Singbola says, I mean, I'm not opposed to 5G or any technology that's coming, and all of them raise concerns initially. However, I think we are in a difficult situation because there's a number of issues and concerns we all have, and I think we're kind of in echoing each other's concerns at this stage. The street furniture is, I mean, I know the area very well, and I've worked with a number of places of worship over my, time, and I think the street furniture will have an impact regardless of what's being said, and where, as Councillor Solanki has pointed out, maybe other exploration, not just necessarily at street level, but on rooftop levels, or alternative sites, it's something that should have been explored and could possibly be explored. So, yeah, I think we're all on similar pages now. Thank you.
We have got Councillor Duffel.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with all the councillors that have come before me just now, and I'll agree with the hundreds of residents that I represent here as well. This application has just not been taken seriously by the council. I mean, there was IT issues, we're missing where people live. The only reason there was a site visit this weekend, and the only reason that there was a site visit was because I requested it as a member of this committee. So we just don't seem to have really got a grips of this application. And also the alternative sites which have been put forward just seem to be a joke with me. To me, it's like they've put over, I think it's 7 or 8 alternative sites which were worse. And what's even moreover, the applicant couldn't even be bothered to attend tonight to answer questions. We have got not one person speaking in favour of it for the whole meeting tonight. I want to know where the applicant is and why they haven't sent somebody to defend what they were putting forward. Moreover on that, kind of the visual amenity is out of character with the area. I know it's not a material planning consideration that I can take into formal consideration, but I am wary of the public safety and kind of the dimly lit area because of these new cabinets that are being installed. As I said, the applicant is just, this is not a serious application, and I think it is demonstrated by the fact that they couldn't even bother to send somebody tonight, so I'll be voting against it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Duffel. Any more questions for debate? No? Okay. In that case, we now move on to the next item, is to vote.
Chair, I'm sorry, I think Councillor Merry has just raised his hand.
It's for some reason I'm struggling to get Councillor Merry. Councillor Prakash, yes.
Is it me now? I was putting my hand up, so my name wasn't called.
Sorry, yeah. Councillor Prakash, for some reason I don't see all the hands. So, Yes, please. Definitely. Yes. When you're ready,
Okay.
Councillor Prakash.
Thank you, Chair. I have read the officer's report on the agenda. I want to bring into officer's notice on the agenda on page 31. Right, and it's the last two lines of the on the agenda. What it says is, in those bottom two lines, the place services comes under the remit of planning committee, and is there 2 points mentioned. Concern was raised due to the proximity of the proposed telecommunications infrastructure to the locally listed church. The comments from place services are summarized as follows. There are 2 bullet points. The first bullet point, it says on that small print, the design and the scale of the proposed telecommunications infrastructure is bulky and excessive, right? And would visually detract from the setting of the church, right? Especially when viewed from the northeast. It says, and that's the first bullet point. The second bullet point is concern about the reliance on screening from the existing trees and landscape features unless the telecommunications company undertakes the responsibility for maintaining or replanting the soft landscaping features. That's the 2 bullet points it says in that report. They had concerns themselves as well. And I have read the officer's assessment report, and I'm not satisfied with that. Normally, these officers always say on merit, but in this case, I'm not going with the officer's recommendation, right? Because one thing I more want to point out is the setting of this monopole in the location will not be landmark. It will be a landmark for the residents and the general public. It will be an eyesore, right? And it's very close to the residential houses as well. And the members have already spoken. They have raised a lot of points. I will definitely not vote for the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prakash. I understand we've got Councillor Paul Mary as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Mary?
Yeah, can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, we can, loud and clear.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I think the officers have made it abundantly clear that central government is determined to railroad through 5G coverage across the country, and at some stage there is going to be a mast somewhere in South Woodford. And it's very clear that, from what the officers have said, that the only grounds that we have for even considering rejecting this application is its location. And I do feel that it's an inappropriate location that is being suggested, and in line with what other councillors said, I don't feel the applicant has really made any great effort to investigate alternative sites. So on that basis alone, I will be voting against the officer's recommendations on this issue.
Can I just suggest, as members, we suggest to defer an applicant to come back with some new proposals of different areas they have explored, or you know, I'm just putting it out. Councillor Bola-Singh.
This is the chair speaking. I think that was similar proposal to Councillor Canal earlier. So I need a seconder for this proposal, please.
Chair, I withdraw my proposal. I'd rather we
Hold
went
on.
to the vote and voted it down.
Sorry, Councillor Singh Bola.
Thank you, Chair. Before we go ahead with any proposal, can I just get clarification from the officers again? They mentioned earlier that any deferral would mean that we would go above the time that's permitted for determining this application and might automatically grant them permission. Is that correct? Did I have that correct, or what's the situation with the deferral?
That is correct. Basically, the way this system or legislation is designed is that we're required to determine the application, the prior approval, within a certain time frame. If we don't, the applicants get permission by default. There was a similar situation that occurred in Yorkshire, where the council didn't determine in time, and the mast was given approval by prior approval. So I would advise members, as your head of service, to determine the application tonight. I don't think it's wise, in my view, to leave the decision to discretion of the applicant, who may not agree to do a time extension. I hope that's clear. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brett. In that case, if we don't have any more comments to debate on, then we can move on to the vote.
Okay.
Any further comments for
Councillor Islam? This is the clerk speaking. I just need to clarify. The chair has said we are going to the vote now, and this is a vote to carry the application or turn it down. Just to clarify. Okay, back to you, Chair, to take the vote.
Councillor Ali, sorry. Go on.
Sorry. Before we go to vote, I just wanted to know, Brett, how long do we have left for this? And if we turn it down and they go ahead and build it, are we charged as a council? Do we bear any costs? I mean, what's the implication if they go ahead against our votes?
Yeah, so basically, in terms of the actual date, I'll get Liz just to confirm that in the message chat section of the Teams. In terms, if we don't support the proposal, the applicants have the right to take the matter to the appeal, to the Government Inspectorate and appeal. In my considered view, if members are to object to this mast, I don't consider we'll be at risk of costs, in my considered view. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was really helpful. Thank you, Councillor Ali. Do we have any more questions or comments to debate on before we move on to voting? No. In that case, thank you, Maggie, for reminding all of us.
I think Councillor has his hand up. I think Councillor Prakash has his hand up. Sorry.
Councillor Prakash, is this your new hand or old hand?
I don't know. It doesn't work. I did raise my hand, but my name wasn't called again. I don't know what's something wrong.
I'm sorry, Councillor. Councillor Prakash, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Very quickly, I think, Chair, we should go for the recommendation, then we decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prakash. Have I missed anybody? Because I can only see the screen and I haven't got anybody else.
No, there's no other hands up, Chair.
Thank you. In that case, we move on to the next stage of voting. So,
okay, Councillor Chair, could I just ask you to clarify for everybody listening in, members of the public, that you're taking the vote now to approve the application or to refuse the application? So everybody's clear.
Yes, that's correct. Members of the committee, I'd like to ask that you've heard the full debate, and you are. Can you confirm? I'll go through all in alphabetical order and ask all members. First of all, I will go to Councillor Ali. Councillor Ali, can you confirm you heard the full debate, and are you for or against the application in
Thank
question?
you, Chair. I heard the full debate, and based on all the concerns raised and everything debated, I am against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor Barmer, can you confirm you heard the full debate, and are you for or against the application? Can you confirm?
Yeah, I've looked at all the evidence, heard all the evidence, and my considered opinion is to refuse the application.
Thank you, Councillor Barmer. Councillor Canal, can you confirm you heard the full debate, and are you for or against the application?
I have heard the full debate. I am against the application.
Thank you, Councillor Canal. Councillor Chowdhury.
I have heard the full debate and I am also against the application.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Duffel.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard the full debate and I am voting against the application.
Thank you, Councillor Duffel. Councillor Emmett, can you confirm you heard the full debate, and are you for or against the application?
Thank you, Chair. I heard the full debate and I'm against the application.
Thank you, Councillor Emmett. Myself, Councillor Islam, I've also heard the full debate and I'm not fully happy about it, so I will not support the application. Councillor Paul Merry.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm I've heard the debate and I'm voting against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Merry. Councillor Prakash, can you confirm you heard the full debate, and are you in support? Sorry, are you for or against the application?
Thank you, Chair. I have heard all the report and I'm voting against the application.
Thank you, Councillor Prakash. Councillor Singh Bola, can you confirm you heard the full debate, and are you for or against the application?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard the full debate and I'm voting against the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Singh Bola. Councillor Solanki, can you confirm you heard the full debate, and are you for or against the application?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard the full debate and I am voting against this application.
Okay, as clerk, I declare that the application is refused.
Okay, thank you, Maggie, to confirm. So in that case, the application is not approved. On this note, can we take a quick comfort break for about 10 minutes?
Chair, sorry, can I just ask a question?
Councillor.
Just on the before we take a break, can I just check the guillotine? I just don't want to come back and then it'll be the end of the meeting.
Yeah, the guillotine's 3 hours and 15 minutes. But before we do that, we need to finish off this item. The reasons for refusal. The procedure, just to remind you, is that the officers will draw up the reasons for refusal based on the debate, but we do need to have some consideration as to what the reasons for refusal are tonight. I think I get the gist of them, but obviously it's for you councillors to determine that. And then obviously the officers will draw them up and present them to the chair, as well as Councillor Duffel.
I think it's Councillor Canal.
Thank you.
Councillor Singh Bola.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have a crack at it. I think the main things are the sighting, the bulking, the height, the negative impact on the visual amenity. I think those, if we can find a form of words that covers that, I think those are the main arguments for refusal.
Andrew, is that clear?
Councillor Islam, I'll take a note of that. It's Liz here. I'll take a note of the wording that members are giving.
I wonder, instead of simply going through everybody again, if members add to what Councillor Singbola has said, and if they want to disagree, fine. So any comments now welcome, so that Liz can finalise her reasons for refusal.
Sorry, if I could add to that, if we could also add that the mast is overbearing and intrusive to the local area, as well as the locally listed building, and the fact that no alternative locations were suggested or reviewed. Thank you.
Councillor Slanky, that last one might be a little...
I think also we...
Sorry, Chair, just quickly, that last point about no alternatives, alternative sites being proposed,
yeah,
I'm not sure that's 100% correct, because of course in the report you would have seen some sites being proposed. Is there more detail you can go into about those sites or the information that you were given, perhaps?
Yeah, but that's the thing, I'm not too sure if this will even count as a material consideration, in the fact that because there was no pre-application undertaken, we didn't even, as a council, have the option of offering, other sites to the applicant. But I don't think that might.
Unfortunately, it's the applicant's job to present those sites.
Yeah. So obviously that doesn't form the material consideration. But if we could consider, the fact that the proximity to the locally listed buildings and to the residents' homes, as well as the appearance and the overbearing and intrusive nature of the mast.
Councillor Solanki, I just want to remind you, it has to be on planning grounds. I think what Councillor Singbola has confirmed. Is there anything new to add to that? That would be great. Councillor Singbola, yeah.
I think what Councillor Solanki just said recently actually fits in with what I've said. I think that's fine. I think previously when you mentioned the alternative sites, that I think Officer was correct in saying maybe let's leave that out. But if we can just stick to, I guess, what I've laid out plus what Councillor Lunky just said now, because that pretty much says what I said, but in a different way.
Yeah, thank you. I think we also had Councillor Burma. Is there anything new to add on Councillor Burma?
I think the only point was the lack of adequate consultation.
Okay.
Sorry, because I'm keen that if we put forward a recommendation to refuse, it's defendable and we don't expose ourselves to any form of costs. I'd just like to remind members that the consultation, we went beyond the statutory requirements. So we met them and went beyond them in terms of how and the manner in which we engage the community. So I would strongly advise that members don't include consultation as a reason for refusal. I want members, when we present it to the inspectorate, to be considered and balanced in their judgment. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Councillor Cannell, is there anything that you would want to add? Because I remember earlier on you wanted a few comments. So is there anything else that new to add on to Councillor Singbola's comments?
I'm very cognizant, Chair, of the remarks of Mr. Leahy, because there are some things here that we as councillors believe are relevant, and I believe that Councillor Duffel and Councillor Nolan made some excellent points, but aren't relevant planning concerns. And I go back to the earlier remark at the start of this meeting, is that we are unfairly constrained in our attempt to protect our borough and protect our residents. But I would concur with the views of Councillor Singbola that the scale of the development is such that it's completely inappropriate. I will express for the minutes, so the last time I expressed things for the minutes, the previous meeting, they didn't reach the minutes, so they're on the recording, interestingly. I'm disappointed that this application has reached this committee for approval. I'd urge you to have a conversation with officers to ensure that we don't find ourselves in this position again. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very, very much. In that case, I would like to take a break, a comfort break, and we will meet in 10 minutes, so which will be, well, in 8 minutes. So shall we say 20 past 9?
Okay, just on a technical point, to let everybody know, it would probably be a good idea to stay on the platform and just mute your mic and camera, and we'll all come back at 20 past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll see you in 20 minutes, 8 minutes. welcome back. Have we got all our members back? Councillor Canal, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, the reason I'm just reminding all members that we need to keep our cameras on, but just to mute ourselves. So could you please make sure your cameras are on, your video cameras? Councillor Merry? Councillor Merry and we're just waiting for Councillor Merry, I think. Maggie, is there anybody else we're missing?
Councillor Merry is here, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councillor Merry. So,
would you, Councillor Merry, could you just confirm you're here, please?
I'm here in hyperspace somewhere.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. We've
Chair,
got the next
Chair,
application.
Chair,
Welcome back,
Meg
everyone.
Speaking. Councillor
Hi,
Islam, sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to do a quick sound check with members because just because their name appears on the side, it doesn't mean they're actually sitting in position. So I'm going to run through alphabetically. If you could just quickly answer okay when I read your name. So Councillor Ali?
Okay, I can hear you.
Councillor Bamra?
Yeah, I'm fine, okay.
Councillor Canal?
I am here. It's not an avatar. It's not a cutout.
Councillor Darfur?
I am here.
Councillor Emmett?
I'm here also.
Obviously, we've got Councillor Islam. Councillor Merry, we've got Councillor Parkash. Are you with us?
I'm present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Singh Bowler.
I'm here.
And Councillor Solanki. Back to you, Chair.
Oh, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back. Our next application is 110620 1932207 High Road, Ilford. And we have got Planning Officer Anna to present the case. Anna, when you're ready.
Sorry, can I just declare an interest?
Yes.
After looking at this application in further detail, I have noticed that the planning consultant instructed by the applicant are an organisation with which my employer works with. However, my employer has not undertaken work on this planning application, and I have no involvement beyond my role as a councillor.
Many thanks, Councillor Solanki. I'm happy for you to continue to deliberate and to vote on this application.
Thank you, Councillor Solanki, for giving us that brief. Thank you. Okay, Anna, when you're ready, please proceed.
Could you share my screen with you, Councillor? It may just take a minute for the item to open.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's still opening. Can you all see the slideshow?
Yes.
Members? Yep.
We can.
Okay.
We can.
Thank you. As introduced by the chair, this is a planning application for 1932207 High Road, Ilford. The Harrison and Gibson building as we know it. I will explain the application in a bit more detail as I go down the line. But as you will see from the description, this is an application to vary under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act conditions attached to the original planning permission. So what this means, a planning permission was granted last year, March. This application is to vary the description of that, to vary the conditions attached to that permission, including what can be built. And the main changes to the approved scheme would relate to the increase in number of units from 290 to 330, alterations to the internal and external layouts, and amendments to the facade. Given the size and scale of the scheme, the original application was subject of an environmental impact assessment. This Section 73, therefore follows, is also subject to the same environmental impact assessment. And in support of the application, addendum EIA was submitted with this application. I will expand on that point a bit later down in my presentation. So I'm sure all of you would know, but I will not presume too much. The site, if you can see my arrow and outlined in red, Harrison and Gibson building. If I can orientate you, it's north. This is the railway line. We've got Linton House over here, Winston Way, Ilford Station, and the Exchange. Just a further aerial view. The property you can see here, all of you would have walked past it several times. It has been vacant for a number of years and been boarded up, and it's not particularly inviting in the Ilford town centre. But just to orientate you again, this is the pedestrianised high road, the railway line at the back, and then Ilford Station is just there in the far corner of the middle corner of the photo.
Yes, sure. Is now exiting.
And the town hall. So just to give you a bit more background, this application is in the local plan as a development opportunity site, opportunity site 9, which seeks housing, retail, and office space on the site. The main application, 2016 application, also formed part of an opportunity site in the then local development framework under which that application was considered. Application was considered and determined in March 2019 after much deliberation with the GLA, and it is valid until 29 March of 2022. Pardon me. Why I mentioned the GLA again, because of the scale of the scheme and the number of residential units proposed. Ultimately, a decision will be made by the Mayor of London, the GLA, on this application. So what members are asked to do tonight is to resolve, to grant or to refuse the scheme. However, officer's recommendation is to grant the scheme, as I will conclude in my presentation. The current Section 73, as I explained, is to do some amendments to increase units, to change the external appearance, and amend the facade. By way of comparison, I've put together a few slides with the help of the submission on the changes. Before I go on with my presentation, I'm going to mainly highlight the differences between the granted scheme, which is a material consideration, and the Section 73, which seeks to vary some of the conditions attached to that permission. I'm not going to go into all the final details of the proposal in terms of how it performs against policies that is clearly set out in the officer's report, but I will highlight some points, and of course members are most welcome to ask me questions on any of those points in the report. So if I can go back to the massing comparison, my arrow here points to the scheme as granted, and just to orientate you again, at the bottom here runs the pedestrianised area of the high road. So further down here would be Linton House, and this way here is the Argos site and the Boots site. If you look at the proposed scheme, the current scheme, in the main, the bulk remains the same as the granted scheme. However, it will be reduced by 1 meter in height, the tower element. And then on these elevations, granted scheme proposed bolt-on balconies, which are now being replaced with integral balconies. Similarly, if we look at it from the east, so to orientate you again, this is the consented scheme, this is the proposed scheme. Here we have the high road side, here we have the railway track and Havelock Street. Again, you can see reduction in depth of the tower building, removal of bolt-on balconies, and reduction in bulk of the core A or block A. If we look at the southern elevation, in other words, if we look at it from Havelock Street, again, reduction in height, reduction in the bulk to the side of the towers. To give you an idea of the comparison between the granted and proposed elevations in more detail, I'll go to materials a bit further down in my presentation, but you will see in the main, it has a very similar appearance. If I can just highlight a couple of main changes, you will see here what we refer to as block C or core C, the upper levels. This is a 15-story building. The upper levels are mainly glazed, whereas this has now been amended to follow the line of the lower levels. We have here in this corner, this is the front elevation, integral six winter gardens. These have been replaced by integral balconies. And then, although not shown here, we've got a reduction in the depth of the tower. Similarly, if we look at the rear elevation, or what would become an active elevation with this development from the Havelock Street side, the glazing elements of the granted scheme has been replaced with brick elements. And then again, from the side, a reduction in height, the glazing elements of the block C replaced with brick element. And then what the bolt-on balconies here in this elevation replaced with integral balconies, and then copper cladding rain screen to the front facade on the high road side being replaced by a bigger area of copper cladding. The same would go for the other side, looking at eastwards. To orientate you, this is the high road. This is the railway line, Havelock Street. Increased area of rain screen paneling, reduction in height, reduction in amount of glazing, and also the glazing screening around the amenity areas and level 8, pardon me, being reduced by railings that are set in further from the parapet walls. This application went to committee in 2016, November 2016. So most of you may not have been on that committee. So just to refresh you, the building comprises of an existing basement and then the upper levels. So the existing basement will be retained and provide parking for disabled blue badge holders only. So the access here with the blue arrow is from Havelock Street, which runs along here. And so this is the front on the high road. So access down from Havelock Street to disabled bays only. There's 21 of them. There's a reduction in parking from the granted scheme, which proposed 28 spaces. All of these spaces will be have electric charging points, 20 of which will be active, pardon me, and 80 of which will be passive, which is an increase on the amount under the granted scheme, which had 20 active and 20% passive. The scheme also allows for cycle spaces at basement level. And then you have the entrances, staircase and lifts for residential use up to the upper course and upper level. And the proposed ground floor, just to orientate you, Havelock Street, access down into the basement, the front onto the high road, and this is Havelock Street. And the green arrow indicates where servicing and delivery will take place. It will be inside the building at ground level. We have two retail units. The granted scheme proposed 5 retail units. However, the current scheme proposed a more rationalized and usable size 2 retail units. We've got access to Core A, which is the big block facing onto the high road from the high road, but this links back and provides access through to an access off of Havelock Road as well, which is an improvement on the granted scheme, which did not have this direct link. We also have access to Block C from Havelock Street and Havelock Road. Ground floor level, we also have access from the high road to the office space, which is located at the first floor level. The granted scheme in this location proposed for a retail unit, and this is now being replaced by an in-house gym with access to all. And then proposed first floor, we have some residential units, but in the main, it will be flexible office space, which will be secured in the Section 106. Similarly as the granted scheme, the proposed second floor, residential units, village hall, village hub, which will be accessed by all. This is similar to the granted scheme. This proposal is a slight improvement on the granted scheme in terms of communal open space and play space, which is again accessible to all. The next scheme, the next plan is quite colorful and pardon my squiggly hand, this is the best I could do on the computer, but this is to highlight the communal and children play areas on the different levels. So if we look at the green area, if you look at it from above, so this is what you'll see, the green area is these spaces at second floor level on either side of the village hub. The area indicated in yellow is the amenity space, the communal space and children play space area on level 8. The MOVI areas are the spaces on level 10. Those were the same for the granted scheme, albeit the green areas have been increased in size. And then in addition and above the granted scheme is the blue area at level 13, which is a terrace space at the topmost level of the development tower and will be accessible to all. So to compare the granted and versus the proposed scheme, the granted scheme at 290 units, of which 40 was for affordable, and the remainder was for market housing for sale. The current proposal is 330, which comprises 40 affordable units and on site, and then the remainder to be built for rent units. The affordable units themselves, in terms of number, stays the same. Percentage-wise, this is on-site. Percentage-wise, whilst the unit has number has slightly reduced by unit, it has increased by habitable room, which is we consider an improvement over the granted scheme, because in the main it allows now for larger units. The granted scheme proposed in the main 1-bedroom units for affordable housing, shared ownership, whilst the current proposal is in the main 2 habitable room units for affordable housing. What I mentioned further down, but did not include here, which may have been more helpful to members, is also the offer which was agreed with the granted scheme and is agreed with the current scheme of £1.29 million towards off-site provision of affordable housing. If we combine the 40 units and the figure of £1.29 million, that will translate into on-site provision of 20% affordable housing by unit and 22.3% by habitable room. I've highlighted the private units, basement car parking. We've spoken about that. The development is essentially car-free, given that it's only blue badge holder and parking provided. But the current scheme is an improvement in terms of quality on the environment because it seeks less car parking and also there's more electric charging points. Cycle parking has been greatly increased over the granted scheme, and whereas the cycle parking for the granted scheme were only provided in the basement, for the current scheme we also have it at ground floor, which is an improvement in terms of accessibility for all. It will include larger cycle parking spaces to accommodate, for example, cargo bikes as well. The communal areas have been increased to comply with the requirement for the increase in population yield for the development. Similarly, the child play space complies. The number of floors stayed exactly the same, albeit, as I've showed you at the beginning of the presentation, the tower has been reduced by 1 meter in height. The density in terms of habitable rooms, it has gone down from the granted scheme. In terms of unit numbers, it's gone slightly up in terms of the granted scheme. However, as we've highlighted numerous times with the other applications and this application when it went to committee the previous round, density figure in itself is not a matter for approval or refusal. Other matters to consider is the quality of accommodation, car parking spaces, access to daylight and sunlight, access to amenity space, the size of the individual flats, their private amenity spaces, and for this scheme, it complies against all those policy requirements. The non-residential uses, granted office, retail. I see I've mentioned office again, but there's only the one office and village hall. And in addition to what was granted, we also have the gym facility, accessible to all. And then if we can come to the Section 106 obligations that will be secured as part of the current scheme compared to the granted scheme. We had the 40 affordable units on site. We've got again this contribution of £1.29 million, which I've confirmed to you would then result in a 20% by unit on-site provision and a 22.3% on-site provision by habitable room. Similarly, as to the granted scheme, we have two review stages for this scheme. Because it doesn't provide 35% affordable housing as would normally be sought by policy. Policy says if you can't, because of viability reasons, which must be demonstrated and which this application has demonstrated, provide a full 35%, you must include review mechanisms. So we have an early stage, which means if the development is not implemented within 2 years from the date of any permission being granted, the applicant will have to reassess the viability of the scheme, submit it to the council to be reconsidered to see if the viability has not improved. If it has so improved, then further affordable housing must be provided, most likely on site in the early stage review. However, in consultation with the council, it can also be provided off site. Similarly, the late stage review, this will kick in before 75% occupation of the non-affordable housing units. So regardless of when the development starts, before 75% of the built units are occupied, of the private units, new viability must be undertaken by the applicant and submitted to the council for review. And if there's an improvement in the viability of the scheme, further affordable housing will be provided off-site. We've got a figure secured for public realm to the amount of £680,000 for both schemes. There will be a residence parking permit restriction on the scheme secured by the Section 106. Given the height of the tower, there could possibly be an impact on television reception. So the Section 106 will require that a post-mitigation scheme be implemented for in case after the development is built, it is demonstrated that there is a negative impact on TV reception in the surrounding area. Again, this is in the Section 106. The granted scheme secured apprenticeships at 1 per 3 million of built cost and just flexible workspace. the current scheme is an improvement on the granted scheme offer, where we now have secured 17 jobs as a result of this proposed development. 30 apprentices, support fee of £51,000 to support the apprentices, a construction phase training job, a brokerage of £250,000. This is during the built out part of the scheme. And then end use phase, which means during the operational phase of the scheme, £22,000. We've again secured the flexible workspace, the office space at the first floor level. We have now also secured £9,900 to go towards Epping Forest SAC mitigation, a carbon offsetting fund of near enough £421,000, and then the monitoring fees of £6,000. Just a couple of visuals which may make it easier for members to understand the external changes to the scheme. So we've got the proposed scheme and the granted scheme. You may recall the rain screen cladding I pointed out earlier. In terms of design, it stays the same. The area covered has been increased to reduce the blank facade of brick walling that you would have seen under the granted scheme. You will see clearly here we've got winter gardens. These have been replaced by integral balconies. We've got glazing around the level 8 communal areas. It's not very clear on the granted scheme, but we will have railings which will be well set back from the parapet wall. And just at the back, you can see a hint of the difference between the elevational treatments of the tower and the granted scheme. But at first glance, they do look very similar. Again, if you look at it from westwards, so just to put you in the picture back there, you will see the exchange just about. So Linton House will be this way. So there again is the increased size in rain screening. You can just about make out the bolt-on balconies on this elevation, which will now be integral balconies. Here you will be more clearly see block C, the glazing on the granted scheme to be replaced by brick detailing, and then the detailing of the tower element. In terms of materials, the material samples would be exactly the same as for the granted scheme. The following two slides are just to highlight to you exactly how the different blocks, the 3 different blocks will be treated. So block B, which is the tower, will be carried out in white brick. There you can see examples, and precedents have been set at Chapter House in Holloway for any of you who may have walked past there, and similarly in Cambridge Street, Manchester. Block B, which is the lower block facing onto the pedestrianised high road frontage, will have a brick pattern going from white brick on to darker brick. And as an example, you can look at 26 apartments in France. I don't know any of you have been there lately, but I certainly haven't, but that gives you an idea of what the appearance of that facade will be. Block C, which is the 15-story block that will be sitting onto Havelock Street, will have cobbled and recessed brickwork in white and then dark grey. The Aylesbury Estate in London and the Faircham Creative Quarter in London will give you an idea of what that may look like. And then we've got the rain screen cladding in copper or bronze. Just a bit more detailing on the curtain walling on the tower. Again, you can see here photos of Chapter House in Holloway Road to give you an idea what the appearance would be. Balconies and railings treatment, and then again the brick treatment for block C. In terms of materials, because ultimately it could make or break a scheme, we have added additional conditions to see the actual samples of materials and to see how it would be laid out on the site. So condition 16 on the report requires materials for all external elements of the scheme, including bricks, cladding, the railings. And then we've got condition 26, which specifically asks for details to be submitted on balcony railing and screening treatment, because that is important to get it right. I should have, before I conclude, should have also just perhaps reminded members that there's an addendum report for this specific item, which include 2 late representations. The one representation is from oh, pardon me, the words have left me now. It's not Ilford Bird, but from the local community in support of the planning application, and they consider that it would improve the viability of the town centre. They supported the granted scheme, and they continue to support the current scheme. There's also a representation from the London Fire Brigade, who is in support, who conclude with the proposals and in support of the proposal in terms of fire access arrangement. They make a comment that an informative should be added about a sprinkling system for the development, given that it is high rise and following on from the awful Grenfell experience. But you will see in my officer comment that the applicant has submitted a fire statement with the proposal, which has also been sent to the London Fire Brigade for review, and it is clearly referred to in that report that the development now, as with the granted scheme, will be sprinkled out throughout. So in terms of a few specific points, I just want to go back to a elevational plan to show you the levels that I would be referring to in terms of
Anna,
air quality. Yeah. Councillor Islam.
Could you do you mind if you can expand it a bit more, because the floor plans, some members are struggling to see it. Is there any chance to expand it a bit more?
You know, I can't, because
it's
in PowerPoint form now, and because I'm sharing the screen like this, it would not allow me to expand it. But I'm hoping that if I'm showing you a high road elevation now of the site. So for just in general, for levels 2 to 7. There was concern raised about air quality and impact of NO2 on prospective residents of those schemes. The scheme, as I said earlier in my introduction, is an EIA scheme, so it is accompanied by environmental impact assessment to test the impacts on the environment of this development arising. This statement was independently verified by council-appointed consultants, LUC, land use consultants. They ultimately concluded that the proposal complies with EIA regulations in terms of environmental impact. A few mitigation measures had been recommended by them, including that these levels 2 to 7, that they be fitted with flues or mechanical ventilation at upper levels to take air from above level 7 to improve the air quality to those flats. So to mitigate this, there is condition, let me remind myself, condition 63, which requests those details to be provided, as well as condition 50 linked to condition 63, which asks for a building management plan to see how the nitrogen dioxide abatement measures will be maintained and implemented. If I can go swiftly back now, because I'm conscious of time, just to my conclusion then. So based on what has been proposed and assessed against all the relevant policies, taking account all objections and all mitigation measures and all consultee responses, officers are recommending approval for this scheme, which would greatly enhance the town centre with its new retail and office accommodation, and provide much needed housing and assist us in meeting our housing delivery target. I would remind members that they are not making they are resolving to grant or resolving to refuse, but they are not making the ultimate decision. and we have to refer back to the GLA under stage 2. As I've explained earlier to you, in terms of review mechanisms, we'll have the early stage and the late stage, because I just want to highlight to members that this afternoon we received a letter from the GLA in respect of viability for the scheme, and their comments indicate that we need further reviews. However, this is not part of their formal stage 1, which was in support of the principle of the development, subject to certain further information provided, and also not part of their stage 2, which is yet to come after we refer the scheme back to them. The comments do not specifically challenge the affordable housing offer or the viability of the scheme, because the viability has been tested by our independent consultant on behalf of the council, and the scheme is currently unviable as it stands. So that doesn't challenge that. So it would not impact on the amount of affordable housing that we can secure now, but just impact on the review stages later on, which is subject to further discussion. On this note, I then just reiterate that officers are recommending planning approval, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Anna. I just want to double check very quickly. Andrew, are we within the time, or do we need to request for extension?
Can I suggest we do it now? We're within time, but I'd see it going beyond 10:30 this evening. So, Maggie, can we make a formal application to extend, please?
Okay. Yeah. Can we have a proposer to lift the guillotine, please, and go past 10:30 and finish this application? A proposer, please. Okay. And a
Thank
second.
you, Councillor Ali.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Boloteng.
And Chair, if you could just go through and quickly take the vote, so that it's a decision of the committee as a whole. So if you could just go through alphabetically,
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Ali, are you in support of the extension?
Extension of the meeting time, the guillotine, yes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I proposed it.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Bamra?
Yes, until 10:30.
Just to clarify for committee members, this is a vote to lift the guillotine so that we can go past 10:30 and finish this application. We may not even get to 10:30, but we may. So we have to take the vote now.
Are you clear on that, Councillor Bamra?
I am, but not very happy to go beyond 10:30. Yeah, okay.
We'll try our best. Councillor Canal?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Chowdhury?
I also agree with the extension.
Thank you. Councillor Duffield?
I agree with the extension.
Thank you. Councillor, well, I'm in the support of the extension. Councillor Merry?
Yeah, Chair, I'm in support of the extension.
Thank you, Councillor Merry. Councillor Prakash?
Chair, agree with the extension.
Thank you, Councillor Prakash. Councillor Singbola?
Yes, Chair, I agree with the extension.
Thank you, Councillor Singbola. Councillor Solanki? Councillor Solanki? We can't hear you, Councillor Solanki.
Councillor Solanki, can you hear us? We need you to pop your mic on to vote on the lifting the guillotine.
The screen seems to be frozen, Chair.
I'll just quickly text her.
She's just messaged me to say that her Wi-Fi has gone.
Oh, she's back. She's back.
There she is.
Oh, good. Councillor,
yes, I agree. I agree with the
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The committee has agreed to lift the guillotine of 10:30 on this meeting, but it may not come to that anyway. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie.
Don't you need me to participate in that vote, Chair?
Sorry, Councillor Emmett. Sorry, I've missed you from the list. It wasn't intentional. It was just oversight. Councillor Emmett, are you in support of the extension?
I agree. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Emmett. Thank you. Now, members of the committee, I would like to remind you, do you have any questions for the planning officer? And just can you keep to the questions only, no debates at this stage. So we've got Councillor, if I start with Councillor Barmer, Councillor Singh Bola, Councillor Ali, Councillor Chowdhury. So I'll start with Councillor Barmer first, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal is increasing the number of units by 40. I haven't heard where they got this space from to have additional 40 units. Is it decreasing the size of the proposed room size or unit size? That's my first question.
Chairman, yes, the scheme as granted, so policy-wise, there's a minimum size for certain types of sizes of units, depending on whether it's 1, 2, or 3 bedroom or above. So the granted scheme had a mix of units with certain floor spaces, and the floor spaces for all those units, which was private market units for sale, exceeded the required floor spaces. So with the current scheme, whilst the envelope of the building says the same and the number of units have been increased, they achieve that by reducing the floor space of the flats. However, it is still complying with the minimum space requirements, and then also rearranging what's the word I'm after, the sizes of the flats. So the configuration of the different sizes of the flats, the sizes of the flats in terms of bedroom numbers are set out on page 58 of my report. If that would be helpful, there's a comparison there. I'm just trying to flick to my report. So if Councillor Bamra, I don't know if he has the report nearby, but there is a comparison there. Between the type and number of units of both the granted and the proposed schemes. So it's a combination of changing the number of bedrooms per flat for the current scheme and reducing the floor space of the granted scheme to achieve more units on site.
Thank you, Anna. Do you have any more questions, Councillor Barmer?
Thank you. It's just a concern regarding the affordable housing. This has now gone down from 14% to 12%, which is very, very low. I know the argument uses viability study, viability report, but could we not sort of persuade them to bring it up to a higher sort of percentage?
Chair, as you would see from the report, whilst in terms of unit numbers, there's been a slight reduction in percentage. In terms of habitable room numbers, which is what we and the GLA use in the main to determine the level of affordable housing, that has increased. The reason that has increased is because the number of 2-bedroom flats have been greatly increased. 2-bedroom affordable flats have been greatly increased when you compare it to the granted scheme, which had in the main 1-bedroom flats. So if I can just say to you, the granted scheme had 25 1-bedroom flats. The current, this is affordable housing now, only be talking about 25 1-bedroom flats. The current scheme proposes 12 1-bedroom flats. The granted scheme had 15 2-bedroom flats for affordable housing, and the current scheme has 28 2-bedroom flats, which of course, certainly in my opinion, is a better affordable offer because we need bigger homes for families rather than 1-bedroom flats. So that is the difference between the granted and the approved scheme. And all in all, taken into account that, plus the offsite offer of £1.29 million, which is index linked, the offer will still be 20% as per the granted scheme per unit and 22.3% per habitable room as the granted scheme.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Councillor Balmer. If you don't have any more questions, I'll go to the next person, who's Councillor Singh Bhola.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Anna, for your presentation. And I'd like to ask you a little bit about the planning context, because you touched on the fact that we have a housing delivery target, and also I recognise that the site lies in a opportunity site, so it's of strategic interest to us to understand how this development and how the unit numbers will impact on our overall delivery. I was looking at the local plan, and LP3 says that the council will seek to maximise the provision of affordable housing in the borough by setting a minimum strategic affordable housing target of 35%. It goes on to say that we will need to deliver a minimum of 393 additional homes per year in order to meet that. Are you able to tell us how many we've delivered in this area in the past 12 months or overall?
I am unfortunately not, and I don't know if my...
Sorry, you're cutting out.
You've been muted, Anna.
Yep, pardon me. No, Councillor Singh Bhola, I can't answer that question. I'm looking to colleagues, and we may not have that question ready for you, answer ready for you for tonight. However, we are looking at this scheme individually, and it will still assist in helping to meet that target. I know we've got a strategic target of 35%. However, that is tested against the viability of the scheme. So this is the offer, this has been tested, and this is what we can achieve on the site.
And I guess, I mean, I appreciate you haven't got the numbers so we can contrast and compare, but our local plan says that 393 is the number that we need to be reaching in order to, as a minimum requirement. But with the emerging requirement from the Mayor's London plan, am I right in saying that actually that number is too low? We need to be above that.
Well, Councillor Singh Bhola, I would say ideally we would have 35% or above for all schemes. However, that policy makes the provision for, if it's not met, the applicant has to demonstrate that it cannot meet it by submitting the viability assessment, which they did, which we had independently verified and tested by our own appointed consultant, and they concur that the site cannot viably achieve more than is offered at the moment. The £1.29 million offer is a commercial offer which the applicant made after discussions with the GLA. The policy also makes provision for, if there's not 35% proposed from the outset, then there must be a review mechanism further down the line to see if viability improves, the affordable housing can improve. And that's why we are including in the recommendation and the section 106 the early stage and more importantly the late stage review to test if viability is improved, then more affordable housing must be provided.
Sorry to cut in, but you've talked about the review mechanism, and you mentioned it in your report. You talk about the early review mechanism and the later review mechanism. Has the review mechanism actually improved anywhere? I mean, we've got other schemes in the vicinity of that area. Have we seen any improvement with the review mechanism on any of the schemes in this opportunity area?
I stand corrected by colleagues, but to my personal knowledge, we've not had schemes implemented yet that had review mechanisms attached, but anyone must correct me now, so I can't answer that question. And even so, if there is a situation where it has improved for another scheme or not improved that may not necessarily be the same for the current scheme further down the line. So that is a bit of a vague answer, but that is my answer. I don't know if colleagues has knowledge.
Sure. Yeah, sorry, Anna. It's Brett, just to try and help and clarify a few points. I think the first point is obviously just to offer some reassurance to members. This is an amendment to a granted scheme where viability has already been tested, so it's gone through that process. I'd also just like to highlight to members, obviously, not only do we as a council independently assess the viability, but also the GLA. So in the previous scheme, the GLA was satisfied, and obviously under this amended scheme, the GLA will also be involved in terms of testing the viability. So the viability aspect will be tested robustly. Now, of course, what we try to ensure is when you do test viability, it's tested at a given time. And that's why we have these review mechanisms, one before commencement development and one after, to make sure that there's no, or to ensure that we maximize as much money from developers. Now, the experience of Redbridge may be limited, but I know elsewhere, the experience is you can claw back additional monies from those review mechanisms. That's the purpose. That's not always guaranteed, but its purpose is to review the viability at another point in time to make sure we maximize the return to affordable housing. I hope that provides some element of clarity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brett. Councillor Singh-Bhola, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, I've got 2 more points actually, Brett, and thank you for your contribution. I guess my question would be, if viability doesn't work here, in the middle of the town centre, next to the Crossrail station, then where would viability actually work?
Chair, if I may. Yeah,
yes,
I think
please.
When it comes to town centre locations, particularly brownfield sites compared to greenbelt sites, viability becomes a bigger issue. Obviously, there's the expense of demolition, there's the expense of clearance and decontamination. So in terms of my experience, for example, I've dealt with a number of greenbelt sites. Now, greenbelt sites tend to be better sites in terms of viability because they are sites that don't have additional costs. Unlike brownfield sites and unlike sites that have existing buildings and existing uses, there's a cost there. Now, in terms of the viability we have undertaken previously under the granted scheme and under the current scheme, there is not a great return for the developers. That's been verified previously, tested by us and GLA. Under the current scheme, it's the same position because of the significant costs associated with the existing use, demolition, decontamination, and building high. So that's why we tend to find there's more viability issues when it comes to brownfield sites because the costs are much higher than greenbelt sites. And you tend to find that greenbelt sites generally deliver more affordable housing, therefore. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brett.
Final question, if I may.
Do you have any more questions? Okay.
Yeah. How are the concerns about archaeology being addressed by the applicant?
Chair, Glass, the archaeological section of the Historic England raises no objection to the scheme, particularly subject to a condition, pre-commencement condition regarding the submission of a written scheme of investigation and follow-up work. That is a condition, one of the first few conditions under the recommendation. I would also add to you that if you look at the report, the first half of that condition is in 2 parts of post-construction and then during construction. The first half of that condition has already been successfully discharged as part of the main application to the satisfaction of Historic England.
Thank you, Anna. Any more questions, Councillor Singh-Bhola? Okay, in that case, I would like to now ask Councillor Ali.
Thank you very much, Anna, for that presentation. I think some of my questions have already been asked, especially Councillor Singh-Bhola, but can I have a bit more clarification on the 40 roughly affordable units? How many are disability access and what kind of floors will they be on and what kind of sizes? Number one. Number two, could you give a bit more explanation on the 1.29 offsite contribution and the 680 public realm just so that some of our public who are listening can understand that a little bit more, because I think the general concern is with the numbers of habitable number of residents moving into the area, the impact, I know normally SEAL covers that, the impact on infrastructure, public transport, schools, GP surgeries, etc., is a concern.
Yeah, sorry, I've just had a message. So sorry, Chair, just on a technical point, for some reason my battery, my charger seems to have now not sufficiently worked, and I've just got a message that battery is running low. So I'm hoping I'm not conking out soon. But sorry to interrupt that with this. Councillor Ali, yeah. So the public realm, the £680,000.
Anna, do you want to just quickly charge your? Sorry, Anna. Do you want to plug your computer in very quick?
I'm just thinking now. It seems the charger is plugged in and the plugs are on, so I'm not quite sure what this message is. Let me just. I do apologise for all
overheating.
Of this.
Oh, overheating.
Oh my goodness.
Anna, do you want me just to cover some of the points?
Yes, please, Brett. While I just.
While you save your machine and your power. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I think in terms of, obviously, as a council under our local plan, we've sort of allocated and zoned this area for housing. And obviously our view is, therefore, it can accommodate new homes and obviously bring in investment. I think when it comes to schools, when it comes to other types of public services, we do apply a SIL charge. And obviously the development will contribute, if approved by members, I think, and I'm going from memory, £937,000 in terms of SIL. And obviously that SIL money is then to be used for things like schools, etc., and infrastructure. Obviously you've got other Section 106 requirements that Anna covered earlier, such as the carbon offsetting. I think that's 450k, and other type contributions in terms of work rep bridge employment. So yeah, part of those fees or part of those monies are to support, therefore, those services and to mitigate the impact of the development on those services. I hope that answers the question, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Brett. Councillor Ali, do you have any more questions?
No, thank you, Brett, for that.
Thank you.
My apologies.
We have got Councillor Chowdhury. Okay, lovely. Brett has managed to respond to Councillor Ali. So we have now got Councillor Chowdhury who will be asking us some questions. Councillor Chowdhury, when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. I, like other members, am also very, very concerned that only 40 of the units would be affordable. I can appreciate that the report highlights that this is what's financially viable, but in Redbridge there is actually a huge need for affordable homes, and that is something that should be strongly conveyed by our planning department. The previous application was granted for 290 units with 40 affordable units. So why is it that with an increase in the number of units, the number of affordable housing has remained the same? Also, can you just help me understand how it's financially viable to only have the same number of affordable units as the granted application when the applicant is able to provide more units in the proposed application?
Chair, if I can just highlight, this is a different type of product that is now being proposed. The scheme is unviable. The applicant proposed 40 units for the granted scheme, which was accepted. They then had to make a further commercial offer on instance of the GLA to up that offer to 20%. I just want to highlight to you, whilst the unit numbers have not been increased, the habitable room numbers, which is what the measure in the main for affordable housing provision, has increased, and that is due to larger units now being proposed for affordable housing. So members will have to weigh up. The granted scheme, yes, has got 40 units out of 290. But they are in the main one-bedroom units, whereas the current scheme yes, has 40 out of the 330, but in terms of habitable room numbers, there's an increase, and we have bigger units for affordable housing, which in my mind would offer a better product for the residents of Redbridge in need of affordable housing. Members have to weigh that up. When it comes down to it, the offer in total for the scheme remains at 20% and 22.3%, the same as the granted scheme.
Right.
Councillor
Okay,
Chaudhry, do you have any more questions for Anna?
Yes, I do. I've got another question, but I can't remember if you already made reference to this in your presentation. I'm just wondering, why has there been a decrease in the number of disabled parking spaces from the granted application to the proposed application?
The decrease in numbers is to respond to comments raised by TfL and the GLA in terms of the Emerging London Plan, and to get the scheme as car-free as possible. And based on the evidence that TfL holds, the uptake on blue badge holder parking in Redbridge is approximately 3.8%. Normally we would apply 10% because 10% is the affordable is the wheelchair housing units that must be provided. So we used to link it to 10% of that. However, there's a shift away from just providing 10% blue badge parking. You will also see that there is in one of the sorry, it will be in the section 106. We have to include a management plan to demonstrate how over time the applicant will be reducing blue badge parking because the scheme should ultimately be car-free given its sustainable location.
Well, it's just that with these car-free developments, people are still going to drive, and it's just going to lead to more congestion in the local area. And Ilford town is already quite congested.
Yeah, well, there will have to be a mind shift with people. For this scheme, of course, it's only the blue badge holder scheme, because if parking was provided for non-blue badge holders, the scheme will fall down against policy. We also have in the section 106 for the granted scheme and the current scheme, a scheme for restricting access to resident parking permits. I think it has to be maybe gradual, but there will have to be an overall change in people's mindset. And if you buy this flat, or rent a flat, because it will now be rented product in this development, you will do so with the knowledge that there's no parking unless you blue badge, and there's no parking nearby, and there's sustainable measures of transport. We are very close to the station, and we can certainly not seek more parking on the site. So it's to respond to the emerging local plan, London plan, and the evidence on the take-up of blue badge holder parking.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Chaudhry. Councillor Solanki, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I, along with my colleagues, have concerns about the affordable housing levels. You know, we are yet again talking about an application with low levels, 14.3% of affordable housing, when we have a local plan that suggests 35%. It is extremely shocking. I do think we are exposing ourselves to the developers who think, you know, it will be okay to come to our borough and build as much as low levels of affordable housing that they wish. You know, we have a local plan. And I think we should be taking into consideration that the fact that the units, I know you say they increased by habitable room, but that's only because the units have increased 330. But if you look at the raw units of 40 in the proposed scheme and the consented scheme, they remain the same. I just wanted to ask some questions about, I know there's a contribution of 1.29 million towards our affordable housing programme, whether this amount, whether if we were to give this amount back to the developers, would they not be able to increase their affordability offer? And I also wanted to ask, it was obviously the scheme has changed to a built to rent scheme, which I don't think has been touched upon much which I think is quite important, you know, for this development, that the fact that it has changed to built to rent scheme. And I was just wondering why this wasn't, you know, discussed in the presentation, but also why has the developer changed it to a built to rent scheme? I you know, suspect that it could be for a number of reasons, but some clarification on that would be great. And then I'd like to refer to your letter that you talked about with regards to the GLA. Looking at the stage 1 report myself, you know, there was a number of concerns that the Mayor of London had, especially on affordability. And with the letter that you received today, that a review is still needed on the affordability number. Is there any way that we could actually go back to the developer and ask why can they not increase the levels of affordability, considering if they were to actually input the 1.29 million that they are offering us? Thanks.
Councillor Solanki, the scheme is unviable, and the letter from the GLA doesn't say that the scheme will be viable. The issue will just be how unviable it is, and that will not change the affordable housing offer on the site. It may change the review mechanism inputs further down the line, but that will be part of a discussion to be had with the GLA, who will ultimately decide to grant or to grant or refuse the scheme. That 1.29 million pound offer is a commercial offer. It's not because of the scheme, not related to the scheme's viability. It's not because the scheme is viable. They are trying to push the scheme through by making this commercial offer, which was sought by the GLA at stage 2, not at application stage, and by members at the time who agreed with the 40 units. I just want to say that the build to rent scheme is being highlighted in my presentation in that in the comparison section. My understanding is that the scheme has changed from private market for sale to build to rent to try and improve at today's rates and prices the viability of the scheme. When the scheme came in, it was submitted in 2016, and things were tested at 2016 levels. So now time has gone on. If we go back to market, it may be even more unviable. However, if I may be able to dodge the bullet, I know the applicant will also be speaking on this application, and he may be able to better explain to you why they have changed from market housing to build to rent, and how he considers that would impact on the viability of the scheme. Providing the 1.29 million pounds back to the developer, so to speak, to plow back onto the site. Sure, I'm not a technical person in terms of viability, but my understanding is, of course, if you've got more affordable housings on the affordable houses on a site, then your rent, your income, and your return diminishes. So that will then also have an impact on the viability of the scheme. But the applicant, I'm sure, will be happy to explain a bit more on that point. The offsite offer of 1.29 million pounds, as I've reiterated a few times, will keep it to 20% and 22.38% as per the granted scheme. And I really just want to say that it's for you to decide whether you want 40 units out of 290 units, or if you want 40 units out of 303, but they are better affordable housing units in terms of their sizes, because they are not 1-bedroom units now, they 2-bedroom units.
Sorry, if I could just come back.
Thank you, Anna. So you got any more? Sorry. Okay, Councillor Solanki.
Thank you. Obviously, yeah, I can understand that they could be better units, but at the same time, that doesn't change the fact that they are the same number of units. I know you keep saying, Anna, that the scheme isn't, you know, the scheme is unviable. Could you please explain what that means? Because for us, you know, how can it be tested? You know, how are these figures tested?
Okay, that's why we've appointed our own consultant to look at these figures. So I can't give you the ins and the outs, but it's based on how much it costs to develop the scheme. The extraordinary cost, for instance, with the Harrison Gibson site, it was riddled with asbestos. That all had to be removed, so that all adds to the cost. And then any developer must have a return on his scheme. It must make some sort of a profit at an agreed level. Otherwise, no one will build a scheme out. So all those factors together will reduce a return, which will then push away any developer of the scheme. So to make the scheme more viable, although it is unviable, we have this. Sorry, I'm talking myself into a muddle now, so anyone can jump in of my colleagues who feel that they have a better answer than I have.
Sorry, Anna, can I just to add, because obviously I appreciate it's a key concern for members as well as officers. Again, to offer reassurance, the viability aspect was obviously under the granted scheme considered not only by RevEdge, by GLA, so there's thorough assessments there. In terms of the current situation, yes, it's been independently verified. It is unviable. I know everyone has views that we shouldn't be considering viability, but it is a material consideration set by government. And that's something that does need to form part of our considerations. I would note that in Ilford, it has the lowest property values. So there are challenges around returns. So that's a factor that we haven't necessarily touched upon. And obviously, when one does viability assessments, it is dependent on the market and how the market is at. Now, we're obviously going to embed review mechanisms as advised by GLA, and we appreciate as we move forward that the market volatility is going to increase as we enter into a deep recession, which is a factor. So I just wanted to offer members the reassurance that it has been assessed. We appreciate the concerns, but to say that, the conclusions that we've put forward will be tested also by the GLA, not only ourselves. And officers are satisfied we've reached the max that we can from the development. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry.
Thank you, Brett.
Can I ask a question to Brett, if that's okay?
Yeah,
of course.
Sorry. How do we use the same figures as the developer when assessing the viability?
So the developer will put forward their figures and will put forward their assumptions. We will commission our own independent viability consultants who will have their own figures, some of their own formulae and assumptions. And the GLA will also have their own consultant. They have a dedicated viability consultant. I think he does most of London, actually. And he will also have his own sets of assumptions, formulae, and data. And what happens is discussions, negotiations as these various consultants, experts in their field, test and retest assumptions, views, and ideas, and then come to a conclusion. And obviously, the GLA response, for example, is quite a useful document in the sense that a number of the assumptions there's agreement on. But there is a requirement for further reviews, which we've captured and will form part of the stage 2 process with the GLA. So that's the process it goes through. And obviously those professionals test each other and examine each other and come to a conclusion on that. I hope that answers the question. Thank you,
Sorry,
Chair.
If possible, can I just ask 2 further questions to Brett? These are really, really important and I think will help us get a better understanding, if that is okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to ask, so I'll ask my 2 questions together just to simplify things. How did we come to the same conclusion as the developer? And actually, how confident are you with the viability process? If that's okay, if you could answer those.
Okay, so I think in terms of the process, I go back to the process. The developers have their consultants. We employ ours as a council, and those consultants act on our behalf. They independently then assess the assumptions made by the applicants and their consultants, and then conclusions are made in terms of what's agreed and what's not agreed and what's changed and what's altered. In addition, because we have the GLA are also involved in that process. You have 3 individuals that specialise in viability that are counter assessing each other to come to a conclusion. And the idea is they reach a conclusion that they consider all to be acceptable. And I suppose it's good to have that third party in terms of the GLA in a stage 2 process. Now, in terms of the process we've gone through, I would say I'm confident. And the reason why I'm confident is 2 reasons, really. One, this scheme's already come to committee and been approved by committee. It's already been assessed in terms of viability and judged in terms of viability. So that's the first reason. And also through that process, the GLA have been involved. Secondly, we've done our own assessments again. And obviously the fact that the developers have put forward a scheme for build to rent rather than sale highlights there are viability challenges there. And thirdly, again, it will be tested and sense checked by the GLA. And we do have 2 review mechanisms in place also. Thank you, Chair, and I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, Brett. I've got Councillor Ali, but I also got Councillor Prakash and Councillor Balmer. So Councillor Ali.
Anna or Brett, can I just quickly clarify, in terms of the rental properties, can they be changed later on in the process and be sold, or is that strict, written in stone, so to speak, and it can't be changed later on down the line?
Chair, just briefly, this is a fairly new product, but in the section 106, it will be secured for at least 15 years. I can't give you the ins and outs now, but then there will be further mechanisms as how it will be dealt with if it were to go on the open market. But in the first instance, it will have to stay built to rent for at least 15 years, and that's secured in the section 106, and that's in accordance with the London Plan policies on build to rent products.
And is that the maximum or that's the minimum?
That is what the London Plan puts forward.
Councillor Ali, do you have any more questions?
Can that be reviewed? Or in our conditions, is that something that we can put any conditions on to make sure that they don't then suddenly 15 years later decide to sell it and profit, and we as a council are left, with people to potentially house?
Chair, if I can just clarify to Councillor Ali, none of the build to rent units are for affordable housing. The affordable housing are separate. If maybe I misunderstand.
No, I understood that. But the people who are going to be renting it, if after 15 years it changes the what's the word I'm looking for? The the use is changed, then there are people potentially who will end up having to be rehoused.
Sorry, I can't give you the whole mechanism. It will be captured in the section 106. I don't think we can extend the period because that is how it's set out in the London Plan, unless colleagues can advise me otherwise. But that is how the build to rent market works. But of course, people who live there, I think one of the mechanisms is they will have an opportunity to buy into the properties if they change. So there are those mechanisms.
Okay, thank you.
We've got Councillor Prakash and then followed by Councillor Balmer. Councillor Prakash. Councillor Prakash.
Chairman, he may be on mute.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm very impressed.
That's okay.
I'm very impressed by the young councillors. I think majority of them wasn't in the planning committee when this scheme was approved, and they know nothing about it. And they got the same aspirations what we have many years ago. So, but I always wanted the officer to be accurate. Right? I can just want to highlight one item. When you mentioned in your report, the other high buildings, for example, Bodger Store, Pioneer Market, right, and others, you mentioned Sainsbury as well. And the Sainsbury, the paragraph in the report, you said the consented Sainsbury scheme for a replacement Sainsbury store, flexible commercial uses, and 685 flats and